looks like I'm in my timer for my actual talk, so you can go ahead and advance. I get so thirsty when I speak. Okay, yeah, let's you can skip that. We didn't get the remote clicker, I forgot to ask. So these are the topics. I'll have a slide for each one. They're all in the book. I think they're all called that, so if you want to follow along this time. Okay, so what's Bitcoin? What's the value proposition of Bitcoin? So Bitcoin implements a transaction confirmation market. Miners are selling confirmations, and merchants, people who want those confirmations, are buying them from miners. That's what fees are. You're used to the model of people who spend the money are the ones who are setting the fees. But if you buy something with Bitcoin, you don't want it confirmed, right? You just want the stuff. It's the merchant who receives the Bitcoin who actually wants it confirmed. It's the same as the Visa network or any other transaction confirmation market. The merchant is trying to get the transaction confirmed, and the miner is only doing that for the fee. So Bitcoin is fundamentally a money that's implemented using a transaction confirmation market. The advantage of Bitcoin to other monies is tax avoidance. Right? The idea that you can avoid the inflation tax, which is the printing of money or the manufactured money below its cost of production. And the avoidance of censorship, which is just a tool for extracting tax, right? If the state knows everything you're doing, then you can avoid the taxes easily, and that's the reason we want to know, and that's really what money laundering is, right? This idea that they can't see, so you might be avoiding some complete prohibition, or just avoiding, paying a capital gains tax or whatnot. But the value proposition, or circumventing a currency control, like moving money to another country without paying the official exchange rate, which is another form of tax. So all the things that we imagine about Bitcoin being really cool and useful, I wouldn't think of those as the value proposition. Right? Those things could be done with any money if the taxes weren't extracted. Right? I work for, I don't know, Philip over here worked with me. I worked with PayPal APIs for years, a couple of years, right? And what a freaking nightmare. But you can't blame PayPal. Chargebacks, requirements to take certain things, independent currencies for every country, currency controls for every country. Those are laws, those are taxes. So Bitcoin allows us to ignore those, if you want to, and get the benefit of doing these things you want to do. So there again, still just tax avoidance. Right? PayPal actually started out as a company called Confinity, and their idea was allow people to do mobile-to-mobile payments. This is pretty far back. We did have mobile phones. Mobile-to-mobile payments, so that they could avoid currency controls with money between each other across the borders, stuff like that. And it didn't work. Why? Because it's not Bitcoin. Right? It didn't have the ability to avoid those controls. So they turned it into a payment system, found out it worked pretty well on eBay, and made a lot of money. I actually went down to their headquarters at eBay and took a training course because that's really complex. So speaking of chargebacks, we had an Eventbrite ticketing system. We had non-refundable tickets because we're laying out all this money for all these awesome people to do this stuff. And some people pay with Bitcoin, and one person who I don't know actually did a chargeback because they Chrono scared, didn't want to come, so they just charged it back, and non-refundable ticket, they got the refund, and Eventbrite paid them the money and took it from us. So that's a requirement by law. Eventbrite doesn't have the option to actually enforce their contract for non-refundability. Okay, so Bitcoin is less efficient than other types of money, but it avoids the tax, so it's a trade-off. But as you'll see, we'll talk a little bit more about this later. It can't eliminate tax in general. It might not even net eliminate the tax on money. but it gives people the option. Go ahead, Peter. Okay, so we talked about permissionlessness in Bitcoin. From my experience, people don't really ask themselves what they really mean when they're talking about permissionlessness, right? So the security architecture of Bitcoin assumes that that we don't require permission. But when people talk about Bitcoin, they often are talking about how do we get permission, right? But if you're not going to ask for permission, even though it's required, what are you? You're a criminal, right? So Bitcoin, by its very design, by the idea that we don't have to ask permission. If we didn't have to ask permission for, say, PayPal, they could do the same thing, centralize it, make it really efficient, right? But they have to get permission, and there's a cost to that. So the presumption of Bitcoin is you don't have to ask permission unless you want to, which means that if you're taking advantage of this core security principle, it assumes you're a criminal. So the basis of the value proposition is that permission is not required. But when it's not required, the question is still, will people do it? We won't have any value proposition if people don't still do it. So when I use the terms white market and black market, people have different interpretations of those terms. I put them in scare quotes, and I'm going to use them consistently. White market is the market where people only operate if they have permission, right? So if somebody comes out and says, you need to pay your capital gains tax on your Bitcoin gains, and they're going to pay. Other people might not. Or Bitcoin is money laundering, if you mine it or if you accept it, it's a crime. And everybody stops, they're white market. People that keep doing it are black market. It's relative to the permitting authority. It doesn't have to be global. There's always a black market, there's always a white market. And of course, it's a lot more gray than that, but those are good definitions. Okay, so in these topics, I just kind of wrote them on flights and random places on my phone, and I still like the title of this one. So the other means principle is a reference to, anyone know? Other means? This is what I say, spirit. A guy named von Clausewitz, Prussian general, wrote a book. On Krieg. I'm doing all this memory, my memory sucks. But it was basically on war in German, and it's apparently a good book. But he also is known for a quote that's in German, something like, politics is war by other means, or diplomacy is war by other means. It's very true. So I kind of flipped that around and said, Bitcoin is war by other means. You're fighting a political battle, but not necessarily using weapons and pitchforks. It's economic. You can hide and use your money the way you want to, and you're competing essentially with people that want to tax you. So it's kind of an odd title. Okay, so the other means principle, that's what it refers to in this topic. I just kind of extracted 4 principles, or 4 phases that Bitcoin is anticipated to go through, not based on my opinion, but based on the security architecture of the money. And so there's a presumption off the bat that when Satoshi starts mining in his closet that nobody knows, nobody cares, and eventually maybe somebody cares, because again, permissionlessness implies that somebody might care. So I call that the honeymoon phase. Nobody cares, or they don't care enough. And to a large extent, that's where we are now. Right? There's not a lot of, there are some pretty onerous laws already, and some that already existed, but pretty much Bitcoin's still operating in the white market around the world. I believe it's not kosher in Vietnam to accept Bitcoin in payment for stuff, but you can still be a trader and buy your shitcoins with it and stuff like that. Then there's this presumption that we might want to operate without permission in the security model. and discussed by Satoshi. So this is what I call the black market phase, where somebody cares, somebody says, let's pass a law, let's make this not cool, and make people stop doing it or use our Fed coin, which we'll talk about in a bit. And so, again, not a bright line where everything happens all at once, but this transition from a honeymoon phase to the black market phase is when the white market, because they obey, no longer use what we consider Bitcoin, and now is being done because people still want to do it. We move into that black market phase. And again, it varies regionally, but that's not really the important thing. Then, at some point, the people who give permission or don't might not like the fact that people are still doing it, and they have an option, which is to 51% attack. I'll stand there. The coin. Look at these two speakers stand in front of them. So I call this the competition phase. Basically, the state, the permitting authority goes into competition with the market. So again, we have this confirmation market, and what states do is they attack markets. They extract tax from markets, from trade. Become a third party in a two-party transaction. So in order to enforce censorship, even inflation, 51% attack the coin, which can be done. There's a lot of unique things about Bitcoin, and one of them is it can be attacked globally from a single point on the Earth. Most efficiently, in fact, from a single point on the Earth. So we'll talk a little bit about jurisdictional arbitrage and other ideas about that a little bit later, maybe tomorrow. But that would be the next logical option. And again, this is inferable from both the white paper, the security model, and Satoshi's comments, right? Satoshi never actually said, or maybe never actually understood, how the market could defeat the state in this scenario. Right? When somebody gets 50% of the hash power, how does the market get born and pushing power? So I thought about I feel stupid, but I actually thought about this actually for about a year. I was like, well, you can't expect people, I think he said, people should band together, volunteer, and increase the hash power, which is, okay, this is cryptoeconomics, we're talking about, I'll cover this a little bit later, but rational economics, right? And the assumption is that people are acting in their self-interest, and it may be in everybody's self-interest to donate to the cause, but we can't assume that, right? It's not economically rational to assume that. Everybody's going to give money away to other people. They're going to spend money in a way that benefits themselves. So that's what fees are, right? Fees rise when you don't get your transaction confirmed because it's being censored. That's a natural behavior of Bitcoin. You would not even know you're being censored. You just keep increasing your fee. And as that happens, and the state is not accepting those fees because it's censoring those transactions, there's an opportunity for other miners who don't censor but want that extra money to accept those fees, therefore raising the hash power, and therefore potentially overcoming the 51% attack. That's the economically rational explanation for how Bitcoin can defeat a majority hash power censor. If majority hash power exists but isn't censoring, nobody cares. It's happened, it may be happening right now, who knows? But there's really no reason to care except the fact that it may censor in the future. And I think I have a slide on this, half the book in slides here, so somewhere in the future we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. And jurisdictional arbitrage. But this can be, one state, group of states, doesn't really matter. It just matters that there's, one censor and there's everybody else. It could be other states, but they still have to come up with the money to overpower the censor, pay for the hash power. Okay, and then the last, one more bullet. And the surrender phase, which is 51% attack, is all or nothing. So somebody's losing all of their money, either the state. So in order to overcome that market force of a fee premium on censored transactions, the state has to subsidize its mining. It does have a tax, that's a cost, it's a political cost, not necessarily a financial cost, but and there's this competition, right, between those rising taxes and those rising fees. But one side is losing everything, right? They're not either collecting the fees or getting the censorship they were trying to achieve. So presumably, somebody gives up. So none of these phases can we assume will happen. They're just the phases that are anticipated by the design, by the security architecture of Bitcoin. Right? They're each discussed. They each have. They can each be inferred from the way that the software and the market works. Okay, so you could certainly cycle through these stages, go back to one, come back through it, and that would be very likely, right? Somebody surrenders, and all of a sudden, the black market's doing its thing, and they don't like it again, they come back, right? Or the laws go away, it's all cool, and then they don't like it again, right? We can see this stuff again, but these will be in or in between, these phases, presumably, indefinitely. So I tried at some point to, you can let me know if I succeeded, but I tried at some point to distinguish Bitcoin from everything else, all right? I've got another slide that talks about, the word Bitcoin and different aspects of it. It's heavily overloaded, so what I'm talking about is the concepts of Bitcoin, right? What separates those concepts that are, say, outlined in the white paper from a shitcoin or just another implementation, maybe a different Genesis block? What makes them different? So I really wanted to find a way to relate this to Principia Physica or Principia Mathematica. These like monumental tomes that define physics or mathematics or thermodynamics or something, right? So the laws of what are the laws at work here? So I needed something that said Bitcoin and something that said the forces at work. So I actually went to Wikipedia and I was surprised that the definitions were not so bad. A cryptocurrency is so the brackets are mine, but cryptocurrency is a money that uses strong cryptography to secure financial transactions, control the creation of additional units, and verify the transfer of units. So I thought that was actually ideal because what you have is this market between miners and merchants, right? And each side of the market secures its half, right? You go to the coffee shop, they secure the coffee, the cash register, the building, all that stuff, and you secure your wallet, and you trade. If your wallet's getting attacked, you're not buying coffee, and if their coffee's getting attacked, they're not selling coffee. So each party in this trade secures its own portion. Miners are essentially securing against censorship, right? And verify the transfer of units. So the miners are essentially performing the transfer, and the creation of additional units is being secured by people with wallets who are verifying. Miners don't even need to verify, right? They just keep mining and maybe lose money, but it's the people who have the money that actually care. So it breaks this down into two parts. I don't know who wrote this, but it wasn't me. Controlling the creation of additional units, which is again the control over signage or monetary inflation, non-market monetary inflation, monopoly monetary inflation. So cryptocurrency, it's kind of a shitcoin word, but Bitcoin dynamics didn't sound as good. And so dynamics, the branch of applied mathematics is from the study of forces and their effect on motion. So this isn't about software, this is about what people do. Things are moving, right? Money moves because goods are moving. So put those words together, I got cryptodynamic principles, thermodynamic principles for Bitcoin. So again, I try to derive all these concepts from what you can infer from the security model. And I can only find three principles that kind of distinguish Bitcoin from everything else. I call risk sharing, energy sinking, and power balancing. So this idea of risk sharing is that everybody can share a little bit of the risk. But why is that important? Well, you don't want to do 2 life sentences for being the person that runs Bitcoin. If you spread it around, everybody can still go to jail, right? On a drug war or whatever, right? It's still a problem. Illegal drug use is very distributed, decentralized, but a lot of people still go to jail. So the idea is, by sharing risk, we're really talking about being able to hide. Operating at small scale, taking a little piece of the risk and being able to hide. So it's why anonymity is important. It's why being able to operate as peers is important. Decentralization itself is not nearly enough to keep you out of jail. So this idea of risk sharing is also based on people's willingness to take the risk. I thought, I knew this would come up in my head when I was talking. You know, we're all tough guy Bitcoin people, but a little bit corona hysteria and, you know, boom, people disappear. So it's not knowable how much risk people will be willing to take to continue to use Bitcoin if it's not cool. But by comparison, we were on track to easily sell out 100 seats, and as soon as Corona was announced, we kind of flatlined it around 50, 45, and I don't know how many people actually showed up or will show up tomorrow, but it's a little less. We lost a lot of speakers too. So people's risk tolerance varies, and I was kind of surprised. You know, like some people I expected it, some people didn't expect it. It's not always what you expect, so you can't really assume it, and that's something we'll talk about also. So when you have the system, it's all decentralized, anonymous, and high quality, on a small scale. That's great, but now you need to have an authority that orders the transactions, so we can eliminate double spends, right? And that's Satoshi's innovation, energy sinking. The system absorbs energy. There's energy sinking into the system using the engineering term. And there's really only two ways to think of proof. You know, you've heard of proof of stake, proof of work. There's all these other proof systems out there. And they all reduce to proof of what's on the chain or proof of what's not on the chain. So I call that internal and external proof. Proof of work is the general term used because of historical, you know, because Bitcoin, for external proof. There's nothing on the chain that is required for you to, at least, you know, Steve, tell me, Barbara. there's nothing, you don't need to get any data from the chain to be able to become a miner. You know, I mean, you don't need to have any history on the chain, right? You just become a new person, become a miner, set your mind, get the blockchain down, start mining transactions. Proof of stake is the opposite. Everything revolves around what's the history of the chain. So anything that you do external is energy consumption. It doesn't matter whether you're counting stars or looking for prime numbers or whatever, it all boils down to performing some energy consuming computation that requires no information from the chain, no permission, right, from the chain. Proof of stake is the opposite, right? It doesn't really require any material computation. It just requires that you have permission granted from, you become the permitted authority based on what's on the chain. And there's a lot of ways to do that as well. And you can combine the two, but from what I've seen, one always holds sway over the other. And there's a coin which I have called a shitcoin that does this because its proof of stake holds sway over proof of work. In other words, the stakeholders get to approve the work that was done or not. So it's just proof of stake. Doesn't increase the security to add in, you know, an authority based on the history of the chain. So what's the problem with staking versus internal versus external? The problem is that security model that we've already discussed assumes that people can raise their fees to push out the sensor, right? But in a staking system, by adding more hash power, which is external to the system. So energy, hash power, et cetera, external to the chain. But if it's internal to the chain, once somebody acquires majority controlling stake, whatever that is, you're done, because they control the future, right? By getting permission from the past, they control all future confirmation, so there's no way to remove the censor. So any system that's internal is not censorship resistant, therefore not a Bitcoin, right? Not cryptodynamically secure, as I say. And the third principle I already discussed is power balancing, right? So once you have the ability to add energy to become the permitting authority, the ordering authority, temporarily in Bitcoin, somebody has to pay for it, right? And Bitcoin balances the power of a sensor. Imbalancing might have been a better term. I labored over that thought, but it sounds better. So there's this balance of power, put it that way. It's not always balanced between the permitting authority who doesn't want the transactions that it's trying to censor to be confirmed. So it's 51% attacking, and the market, which doesn't care. It's economically rational, just taking the highest fee. So in Bitcoin, anybody can do that. Doesn't matter what history is in the chain. You can always add more energy, and therefore you can always push out the censor. In a staking system, which is everything that's based on history, once that controlling authority has control, there's absolutely no way to get them out unless they want to be got out, right? But if they have other economic interests that are not necessarily just pocketing some money for fees, like say maintaining their paper shitcoin, or enforcing their other taxes through monitoring transactions, then they may be willing to take a loss on their value of their money, right? By just attacking, by not letting any in the future occur that they haven't approved. Okay, so that's power balancing. There's this balance of power, which we talked about the other means principles. Rich stirring, energy sinking, power balancing. So what other principle at work is a force in Bitcoin? People defending their mines, their nodes, wanting to do them, independently, work being sent to the system to determine authority, and then money being spent by people who want to transact in this confirmation market to pay for that censorship resistance. Those are the forces at work in Bitcoin that affect people. A lot of ways to implement them, so you'll see when I talk about Bitcoin, I'm not talking about an implementation, a history, a community. There's a lot of those things. I've got a slide on that, but I'm really just talking about the principles. You could say Litecoin, for example. Litecoin doesn't deviate from these principles. It just changes some parameters, right? Very minor. It was like 2 lines of code in the Bitcoin to add in an option at runtime just to switch to Litecoin. Change the hashing algorithm and fix the time warp bug. Change the you didn't need to fix the time warp bug. I was threw it in there, and then change the interval. Okay. Is this my last slide for this one? Okay. Good. Okay, axioms. Axioms are assumptions. So you have an axiomatic system like Euclidean geometry, right? A set of assumptions, and Philip, my math guy over here, super smart computer science math guy. He would tell me he's not a math guy, but it's ridiculous. He can talk to you all about these kind of systems. But so math itself is an axiomatic system. It's based on assumptions. It's not pure truth. They tried that, didn't work. Look up Russell's paradox and what's his name? Kurt Gödel, who proved it. Okay, so Bitcoin uses these systems in its implementation. These are all systems based on assumptions. Math, typically Zermelo-Frankel axioms. Am I getting that right? Probability theory and catalactics, which is kind of the Austrian economics term for market economics of the market, as opposed to other things. And catalactics, this is not formalized so well, say in Mises it's better in Rothbard, but this is really Mises's contribution to economics, is rejecting observation and history, as he put it, as a basis for economics being rational. So it's based on assumptions that human act. It's called the action axiom. And time preference, that people prefer something now more than they prefer it later. And if they get it later, they're going to need to be compensated for it. So that's the time preference axiom, and you can look those up on Wikipedia. They're decently covered, I guess. But Bitcoin is something more than all these things. It's not just these things. So it's based on another assumption that resisting the censor of the state is possible. It can't be proven, because again, we can't prove how much people are willing to resist, to keep doing things when it's not allowed. And we can't tell how much the state is willing to pay to subsidize a 51% attack in order to get what it wants. And we can't prove how much people will be willing to pay to overcome that, to get their transactions confirmed. How much is it worth them? Value is subjective. So this is provably not provably secure. It's assumed to be secure if you assume that people will do those things. If you don't make that assumption, you go work on R3 and you give up on Bitcoin and you say, we can't secure against the state, and that's been done. Famous rage quit. But that's fine, it's just a different set of assumptions. Doesn't mean you're wrong, right? You just have a different set of assumptions. There's Euclidean geometry, there's spherical geometry. They're not wrong, they just make different assumptions. So we call this the axiom of resistance, the idea that this system, as described in the cryptodynamic principles, can actually resist state control. Can't be proven, but we believe we can do it, or it can be done, so we work on it. Bitcoin is secure only to the extent that these assumptions hold. They don't hold in all situations. So change assumptions. But the important thing is if it's not based on that assumption, again, I guess I just covered this, right? It's not Bitcoin, right? If you assume the state will control, you're clearly not working on Bitcoin. Or that it can't be defeated in the manner we discussed. And so you work on something else that requires permission and only is usable in the web market. I talk kind of fast, so I was trying to go slow and drag that out. I only left myself a minute and a half for questions, but there'll be plenty of time. So, questions? We have a mic back there if anybody wants to ask any questions. Be brave. I think everybody in the room knows each other. Too bad I can't turn the camera on. So there's actually, for you people on the video, there's actually nobody sitting here. It's just me. I'm kidding. Come on, Phil, you have a question. You have 1 minute to kill. Doesn't have to be relevant, as usual.
Okay, so let me be a little bit of a pessimist.
The mushrooms are forming us.
Yeah, right. So at this point, do you think we're ever going to get out of the honeymoon period? Like, isn't it defeat already? Isn't it surrender? Because
you're asking me to make a prediction. You know how that ends up?
Not a prediction, just your judgment
it's
of the current state of affairs in Bitcoin.
So we have a great panel coming up, which I think you're on. And then talking about what's it again? The survivable ecosystem panel, which we're going to discuss how do you make things that survive and that people use, and we can certainly flesh that out more. As a rule, I try to be careful not to make predictions because I think it's just stupid. People ask all the time, what's the price going to be? What phase are we going to be in? I don't know. All I like to say is that this is how it works. Right? This is how it's defined. If I was to hazard a best guess at answering your actual question, it would be there'll always be people that will be okay operating in the black market, and there will always be people that are not, and there'll be some people that are in between. And therefore, I think Bitcoin, if it has enough support in terms of fee premium being paid to prevent a censor, then it will sell.
It just seems like the black market itself, if you're operating within the black market, it also has its structure, its hierarchy, and people sort of, you wouldn't call it taxing the tax,
absolutely.
But they do that within the black market as well.
Yeah, well, a good example, I just got back from last month. I did a 2-week ride in Colombia. In Colombia, 2 years ago, they ended their war with FARC, communist-backed insurgency that went on and kind of dwindled after the Soviet Union stopped paying the bills, I assume. And so I was reading a little bit about it while we were riding around, and it's actually pretty nice. There's a little bit of crime, but there's no more kidnappings and stuff as far as I know. But FARC took areas of territory within Colombia and then taxed the farmers, the cocaine farmers, right? Coca was definitely the biggest, most financially supported, beneficial crop. Of course, the state did as well. They explicitly supported, or do support, I assume. And the FARC taxes were actually higher than the state taxes, which was not a great idea, if you're FARC, but they needed the money, so this kidnapping and taxing. They had all kinds of interesting tax ideas. It was very kind of, it wasn't this random group of people with guns. It was socialist, kind of committee meetings and stuff. And they said taxes high enough that the farmers sided with the state in their own territories. Backfired on them. So yes, their black market does do these things. They had all kinds of other taxes. They had a rule that they were going to only you couldn't have over $1 million US in net worth, they just take the rest, so like that, wealth tax. Anyway, so the black market does that. Yes, time to move on.